This gospel today is probably regarded as one of the most dullest gospel passages in all the gospels, because it consists of this long list of names, many of which mean very little to most of us who are Christians. But it's important to realize that in many cultures, ancient and modern, this genealogy was what you might call the equivalent of a roll of drums, a fanfare of trumpets, a town crier calling for attention. Any first-generation Jew would find his family tree both impressive and compelling. It would be like watching the Macy's Day Parade on Thanksgiving Day, coming down the avenue of New York City. We watch the bands in the front and the floats and the balloons in the middle, but all eyes are waiting for Santa Claus, who comes in the position of greatest honor right at the end. One of the main purposes of Matthew's gospel, which was written by Jewish Christians for Jewish Christians, is to show the continuity of Jesus in the history and the tradition of Israel. Jesus was no upstart. Still less was he a rebel or a traitor. On the contrary, he was the natural development of the long process of God's relationship with his people. Today's passage from Matthew is the opening of his gospel, and it's introduced with these words: the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. These two names are the most significant in the family line. Jesus as the Christ will be king, following in the line of David. And he is descended from Abraham, to whom God had said, "In your descendants all the nations of the earth shall find blessing." Of course, it's not a complete genealogy. And the names mentioned all appear one way or another in the Hebrew Testament. There are 4 women, interestingly enough, in this genealogy who are mentioned: Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Mary. Each one of them is an interesting character in their own sight. There are also a number of scoundrels on the list. Even David, one of the most outstanding servants of God, was an adulterer and a murderer at one point. When the Son of God became a human being, he really did become one of us. The gospel makes no effort to sanitize his origins or the members of his immediate family. There is no shortage of skeletons in Jesus' closet. When John says, "The Word became a human being and lived among us," he said no less than the truth. And if Jesus was totally incarnated in the world so that he could communicate the message of God's love to the world and for the world, then we too must be totally incarnated. We are not true to our calling if we think that in the order to be true to Jesus, we have to separate ourselves from the material and sinful world. We cannot be salt for the earth and a light for the world unless we are fully inserted into it, but only when we are also fully identified with the values and the concerns of the kingdom. Otherwise, we are salt without taste